Welcome into the Simmons Scoop with Chad Simmons. We got the director of recruiting here at Rivals. Yes, that's right, Rivals, your source for high school recruiting coverage. We are now the iconic Rivals brand. So, big show today. The month of June was a wild one. We had a ton of visits, a lot of commits, a few flips, but now we're into July, and some of the biggest names in recruiting are going to be coming off the board, so we're going to break it all down in this video. But first, do me a favor, hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. The reason why is because when we go live, I want you to be a part of it. We have live commitments almost every day this week. The best way to get notified is to be subscribed. All right, let's get it started. Bring in Chad Simmons, and we are going to talk Georgia. 15 commitments in June. We're taping on July 2nd, and they've already racked up a commitment. Defensive lineman Preston Carey came off the board last night, committed to the Dawgs. Chad, let's go back to the month of June. What do you think was Georgia's most important commitment?
Man, I did a feature about that earlier this week. I mean, for me, just kind of knowing from the national perspective, a big one for me was James Johnson. Knowing how hard Miami tried to work to keep from Miami Northwestern right there in their backyard. He took the last OV to Texas. We know both those programs play a strong NIL game as well, and both offered him a chance to play and compete early for playing time. But it goes back to that first visit to Georgia back in January. I mean, you could talk about Justice Fitzpatrick, a big one, Jay Lamar, their top running back on the board. The list could go on. But when I kind of looked through those 15 commitments for 2026 in June for Georgia, the one that just really stood out to me was James Johnson.
All right. One that stood out to me was PJ Dean, because just being around the office, all the buzz that day was about South Carolina. Really, the 24, 48 hours prior, it sounded like South Carolina made a big move. Hey, they might steal one from Georgia, but no. Georgia closes on PJ Dean. How'd that go down? Was it kind of crazy late?
Yeah, very late. Yeah, I mean, look, I talked to PJ, throughout the weekend leading up to that announcement, and even going back a week prior, Carolina had the buzz that last weekend of June. He made a quiet, under-the-radar visit back to Columbia, got some work with that D-line staff there. The buzz was pretty strong, coming out of South Carolina. As we went through that last week of June, Georgia kind of picked up some momentum, became more of a factor. Then it kind of switched back to South Carolina just 24 hours or so before the announcement. And then leading up that last 1 to 3 hours before he announced at 3:30 on Monday, this thing got very interesting. I thought it was, is there ever really a slam dunk anymore in recruiting? It seemed to be pretty close to that early on Monday morning for South Carolina. Georgia got him on the phone with Glenn Schumann, Trey Scott. They answered some questions from Mom, from PJ, his circle, and they got it done. They just kind of gave him the plan, what they want to do with him defensively. And look, he was an offensive line target for Georgia 2 years ago. He switched midway through the defensive line. He had some questions how he fit in the scheme, and that's kind of what it came down to, man, making Mom feel good about that fit of him in Athens. Obviously, his brother, Jared Wilson, played there at Georgia as well, so some strong ties there to Georgia. But, yeah, that was a very interesting race and battle that Georgia won very late on Monday over South Carolina.
All right, so we're in July. Is it going to be a quiet month? What should Georgia fans expect when it comes to recruiting in July?
It will not be quiet. Let me just say that right now. We may have some fireworks here on July 4th. A guy like Braden Fogel will announce his commitment as LSU, Georgia, and Notre Dame. And we like where Georgia sits there for the tight end out of Ohio. And look, there's some big names that will pop or are expected to pop in the month of July with guys like five-star linebacker Tyler Atkinson, 5-star tight end / hybrid Caden Prothrow. They're involved with defensive linemen from Europe, Valdon Sohn, elite offensive lineman Brett Colajay. There's some big targets still out there for Georgia. I think they'll be very active and win more than they'll lose in the month of July. You got, linebacker Nick Abrams on his birthday, July 16th. Yeah. So, look, Georgia's up there in the top 1, 2, at minimum top 3 for all the guys I just listed. They're trending for multiple guys on that list as well. So it will not be a quiet month of July for the Georgia Bulldog fans.
All right, let's wrap it up with this. What do you think Georgia's biggest need still left to fill is in the 2026 cycle? Or are we just to the point where Georgia's adding the best available?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still a need. I think the need probably for me would be linebacker. They want to
Mm-hmm.
sign three this cycle. They did flip Shadarius Tootle from Auburn. They have one now on the list. You know, if in the perfect world, if they can add the guys I mentioned, like number one, Tyler Atkinson, top player in the state of Georgia, the linebacker from Grayson High School, and then also up in Maryland, Nick Abrams, who's really focused on Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, and Oregon. Those are the two at the top of their board at the moment. They love to add both. If they can add one, they may kind of reevaluate in the fall and look to add one more piece closer to December. But linebacker to me would still be their biggest need. And adding a second running back, I think, is also they want to do that as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, Georgia fans, talk to Chad and I. What do you think the biggest need left to fill is? Who's the most important target on the board? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, let's head down to Gainesville, talk a little Florida Gator recruiting, and UF is battling for some top targets. We'll start with defensive line with edge Trenton Henderson. Now, we're taping this on Tuesday morning. Trenton Henderson's going to come off the board Tuesday night. So some fans might be watching this and he's already committed. Chad, where do you think he's leaning ahead of this decision?
Yeah, morning of, I like where LSU's at. And this has been very fluid over the last week or so, Josh. I mean, you followed too. I mean, Florida was the clear-cut favorite coming off that OV to the Swamp back in June. And he took a trip to Texas the week after that. His OV to LSU was earlier in the process. And look, he's kind of come out of each visit saying LSU was the favorite, then Florida. Texas made a big push late as well. They're all three, as we tape this, Josh, still in communication with Trenton, but the most buzz for me and others on this team here at Rivals is LSU. We think they have a great shot to take him out of Florida. Again, Florida's kind of running that close second, so we're still watching this one, but right now he's LSU's to lose.
All right, now one that it sounds like Florida could close on this week is cornerback C.J. Hester. What are you hearing here?
Florida's been setting the pace in this race for some time, Josh. Obviously, four-star DB from Cocoa, about an hour or so outside of Gainesville, a top high school program in the Sunshine State. They've had success there in the past. I think they'll have success here in the end. Again, with a guy like Hester, he's a guy that's looking at like Syracuse, Iowa, Georgia, Auburn, but Florida's in a great spot when he makes that decision this week.
All right, let's move on to Kendall Gervil, defensive lineman from Fort Myers, Florida, and he's going to be making a decision probably about 3 hours after this video goes live, and this has been a real battle. Seems like between Texas and Florida, a lot of defensive line battles between those two programs. Which way do you think this one could go?
Yeah, a big need of position for both, and both want to recruit the best in the country. And Gervil's one of those guys, and just happens to be he's a guy in Florida's home state down there at Fort Myers High School, and they want to take advantage of that proximity and location and kind of keep him at home. And being 3 hours from Gainesville, this one has gone literally back and forth over the last week or so. I mean, this was pointing all Texas's way. I would say even days ago, Florida didn't give up. They stayed in communication, and things have started to trend their way late in this decision coming up, like you said, just a few hours away. As of the time we shoot this video, I like where Florida sits, man. Billy Napier's done a great job here. Coach Chapman, Coach Peterson, all have been heavily involved. Texas remains in the thick of this race, but right now, I like where Florida sits for Gervil.
All right. Well, I like where Florida sits for this next one. Linebacker DQ Forkpa was on this channel just this week with an exclusive interview. We talked about his top programs. He's going to make that decision next weekend. So what do you think when it comes to Forkpa? Are the Gators the team to beat?
Yeah, what I like about Forkpa so much makes him fun to cover is he's very transparent. I mean, he hasn't hidden that love for Florida. He's named them his leader to multiple people, multiple times. I think, like you said, Josh, they're still in a good position here when we're just over a week or so away from that commitment announcement. Look, Florida State got him on campus, gave him a lot to think about. The parents are involved, looking for the right fit academically, athletically. Miami's been in the mix as well, but I think Florida is going to be tough to beat. He's been there a lot. He knows multiple players on the team. He's at IMG Academy. IMG has sent guys to the University of Florida. Coach Janav Carr is in that class this year, an offensive lineman from IMG. He knows people there. He's comfortable there. Coach Peterson, Coach Napier, the chance to play. A lot of things are in Florida's favor right now for Forkpa, and I don't see that changing unless there's a major change in the next week or so. But Florida is in a very good spot here for DQ Forkpa.
All right. Tight end Hezzy Kent will be making his decision right here on the Rivals Recruits channel on July 12th. Hezzy Kent, a massive prospect, whether he's a tight end, offensive tackle, teams want him on their roster. What are you hearing?
Yeah, he's a big athlete. Like you said, he can play either way. In his mind, he's a tight end and tight end only. And that's where I think Florida's done a great job here with Russ Callaway leading the way as the tight ends coach, kind of showing him and making him believe that, hey, you can fit in our scheme here offensively as a tight end and do well here. I think Miami's been in the battle here. Texas has as well. Talking to sources, a week or so away, I think Florida is trending in this race.
Nice. All right, let's wrap it up with in-state wide receiver, Samori and Wingo. Who are the top teams here?
South Carolina's in the mix, but he's an in-state kid for Florida and Miami. FSU's been involved too to some extent. I think Florida's been the team with the most buzz around it throughout the spring, summer. If Florida wants to push, I think they can land Wingo in this class. I mean, he likes the staff. He likes Billy Gonzalez. I would pick Florida today for Wingo as well.
All right, Florida fans, a lot of great options on the board. How do you think the Gators finish, and are there any top targets that I didn't mention? Let us know. All right, let's talk a little Tennessee recruiting because Volunteers are exploding on the trail. Legend Bay, Darian Albert, TJ White, Jamin Theodore, Zayden Anderson. The list goes on, now up to 16 commitments. Chad, who else are the Vols in good shape for?
Yeah, they're in some battles. I think you look at where I live right here in Georgia, I can give you three guys right off the top of my head of starting with Braden Rouse, a big-time target for Tennessee, has been for a year plus. His teammate at Kell High School, Joel Combe, a safety DB who Tennessee's very much involved with. And then Darrell Rivers from McEachern High School in Powder Springs, Georgia, who Tennessee's really trending with, who will announce his decision later on this week. All three of these guys are very close to making their decisions. Rivers has a date set for July 4th. Combe and Rouse could be days away, maybe a week at the most away from making that decision as well. Tennessee could end up with all three. They could end up with 2 out of 3. They could end up with maybe 1 out of 3. I like them right now the best for Darrell Rivers. He's a guy that went to Tennessee one time on the OV, fell in love with Knoxville. I like where Tennessee sits. I still would pick Tennessee for Braden Rouse today as well. Texas has come on strong. They've given him a lot to think about. They're Tennessee's biggest competition. There is some optimism in Austin. They can get Braden Rouse away from Tennessee as well. But Tennessee has the deep roots, deep connections here. It goes back to relationships and comfortability. Other things are involved now with NIL. I like Tennessee's spot there, but Texas is definitely one to watch, a serious threat to Tennessee. With Combe, I think South Carolina, this one goes back and forth on my end with different sources every day. Tennessee, South Carolina. Tennessee, South Carolina. Right now it's split down the middle, 50-50. I think he picks an SEC school. Tennessee is definitely in the mix there. When you look in-state, you see Joel Wyatt, who's now pushed his commitment back from July 6th to maybe later on this summer. Could be potentially during the season. He's had an offer from Oklahoma here recently that intrigues him. We still think Vanderbilt and Tennessee are kind of the main players in this race. Then you have offensive lineman in-state Kamari Blair, who Tennessee's come on strong, offered earlier this spring, has gotten him on campus and really kind of made him feel like a priority. South Carolina is a major player there. And then Tennessee, I think, is trending as well. I mean, they're an in-state school. They've made him a target. Could be potentially hard to beat. So then you have guys like, I know you want to bring up guys like Savion Hyder, Tristan Keys, the elite 5-star, the best of the best at receiver and running back. Keys is committed to LSU. this will be a recruitment that goes into, all the way into the fall and closer to signing day in December, with keys, whether it be Tennessee pushing Miami, Texas A&M, Savion Hyder. I think Tennessee is battling Michigan there. There's some optimism with at least one source I talked to at Tennessee that they're very much right there, if not even slightly ahead of Michigan in this race. Other sources feel like Michigan, is setting the pace and doing a great job there, with their staff and their history of running backs and how they run through the offense. Running back runs through the offense there in that scheme at Michigan as well. So Ohio State's involved. I don't think Georgia's much of a player, but there's still a lot of meat on that bone
Mm-hmm.
at Tennessee, even though, like you mentioned, all those kids have committed here recently to Josh Heupel and the Vols.
Yeah, Tennessee on the verge of a top 10 class, currently sitting at number 12 after this flurry of commitments. We'll see how they finish. Tennessee fans, who do you think is the most important target still left on the board? Let us know.